Okay, guys, I have arrived in the building, and everybody just give me a little message here that you can hear me out there. This is Roberto with Innovative Sports Training. Another edition of Your Life, Your Health is about ready to start. So just send me a message saying that you can hear me pretty good, and we'll get this thing rolling here. Tonight's presentation, we're going to talk about myths and facts regarding exercise, disease prevention, and diet. Now, the topics that I'm going to focus on, it's not going to be a real long presentation. We're going to talk about macronutrient portions, fat burning versus sugar burning, the gut-brain connection, cholesterol and heart disease, exercise myths and facts, autoimmune, and lab interpretation, which is a new program I've started up in the last month here or so. Now, for the past month, we've had different presenters in these webinars. We've had Dr. Donna Mladenoff, who spoke on the gut-brain connection. We've had Dr. Evan Mladenoff talk about hormone balance and relationships to testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, and how it relates to cancer. We've had Dr. Kayla Campbell speak on ketogenesis, ketogenic type of eating patterns, which is a very, very, very low carb, high fat way to eat. And I did a presentation myself about a month ago on cholesterol, which we had some technical difficulties with, but nonetheless it is on podcast for you to listen to. So we're going to kind of summarize those topics, and then I'm going to open it up for questions at the very end. Now, I want this to be mainly a question and answer seminar tonight, guys, because this is your show. Just think of it like ask the trainer night. Okay, ask the coach, ask the practitioner, ask the therapist. Now, I'm not a doctor, but if I don't know the answer, I can certainly get the answer to you as quick as I can. And having said that, let's get the ball rolling here. I'm going to minimize a few things on my screen. There we go. Okay, now, guys, this chart here is called the aspects of steroid hormone balance. Now, I'm not going to get real technical, but think of this chart as your body and all the peripheral things surrounding how the body functions. In the middle there, steroid hormone balance, which is basically your adrenals, your testosterone, your progesterone, your estrogen. That's really the center of this whole chart here. Now let's look at the peripheral aspect of it. Neural tissue health, which is your brain, memory and learning, neuronal connectivity, quality of sleep. Let's move down. The endocrine function, pancreas, insulin, thyroid, ovarian hormone levels. Let's move across to the left. Fat and protein metabolism. Pretty important aspect to survive, how you digest food. Fat and protein metabolism. Mucosal surface integrity. Fat and weight distribution. Protein turnover. Detox capacity. Mixed function oxidase modulation. Detoxification basically is your liver doing its job, or you getting rid of all the junk and toxins within your body. Heavy metal endochelation, which is really another word for flushing. Immune regulation, eicosanoid modulation. Is your body responding to pro and anti-inflammatory states like it should be? Believe it or not, inflammation is a good thing because it helps to fight disease if it doesn't get out of hand, if it's not chronic. Carbohydrate metabolism, glucose homeostasis, cell energetics, muscle integrity. All of these things are connected to that center part there. So look at this model as kind of the entire body of how the body functions. Relative to, are you eating the right kinds of foods? Are you exercising, getting enough activity? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you reducing your stress? Are you taking the right types of supplements? Now, this next chart is called the steroidal pathway. Now, this is one of my favorite things to go over because it relates to cholesterol. People look at cholesterol as being this dirty word almost, because when you go to your doctor, the doctor says you really shouldn't have high cholesterol, or you should have really low cholesterol, which I'm going to go into later in some other slides here. But cholesterol is a pretty important component of the body because it helps to make B vitamins, LDLs, pregnenolone, acetylcholine, and high-density lipoproteins. All those things are essential for how the body functions. Now, having said all that, if you go down the flow of this chart here, pregnenolone, which most of you probably never heard of, but it is a hormone. It is the precursor to a lot of other important hormones of the bodies, such as DHEA, which makes testosterone, which also DHEA makes estrone, estradiol, and estriol. Now, those estrogen hormones are mainly female hormones, but guys, we have them too. Testosterone obviously is a male-female hormone, but ladies, you have some testosterone components as well. Now, across the chart there, you have progesterone, you have cortisol, you have cortisone, you have aldosterone. All those things are important for how the body functions. I'm going to move on to the next chart because I'm going to go through these fairly fast tonight. Pregnenolone stealing. Now, here's where a lot of dysfunction comes into the body. In the center there, you have cholesterol in blue. Now, go down the chart there, pregnenolone, DHA, testosterone, but I'll go all the way down to cortisol. You see the little perforated red line there that goes to pregnenolone? When your body goes into stress mode, the brain needs to survive, to send out survival signals for you to keep functioning. And what happens there is that cortisol will steal like a thief in the night from pregnenolone. And what does that do? That creates a deficit in terms of how much testosterone you gentlemen have. It also creates an imbalanced deficit of how much estrogen that you ladies have. It also affects progesterone. It also affects aldosterone. Aldosterone is a mineral hormone that's important for blood pressure. So this is a stressed out person right here because they're stealing from Peter to pay Paul. It creates a lot of imbalances with hormones in the body. Now let's get into exercise myths and facts, which is the topic of the show tonight. Organs, muscles, ligaments, tendons, nerve endings, and bones are all part of the same network via the brain, which is the master control panel. The most productive form of exercise are compound movement patterns, which strengthens the communicative network. Now, most of you out there have trained with me and know about my type of training. I'm not a big believer in one-dimensional bench press, arm curl type of exercises. I believe in training the entire body, getting as many parts moving as I can within a safe manner. That is how the body is meant to be trained from a neuromuscular perspective. One must differentiate activity versus training. Both are extremely beneficial if managed right. Now, guys, what activity is you go out in the backyard and play volleyball with your kids. You go play some tennis with some buddies. You go for a hike through the woods. That's what I would consider activity. Versus regimented training is going to the gym maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And don't really confuse the two. You can be very, very, very active, which is in some ways like training. If you go hiking through the woods with a 25-pound backpack, that's a workout. But it's something that you really enjoy doing because you get that endorphin. Whereas you go to the gym and you do sets with 90% squats for 10 sets, that's more of a regimented, hardcore, kick-ass type of training. And quite frankly, there's some that enjoy that. I used to one time myself. Now I don't go that heavy like I used to, but that's something that you might enjoy doing as well. But most people, for the most part, are going to enjoy more recreational activity as long as you're moving. We are not meant to be immobile creatures. We really aren't. Activity and exercise that engage three-dimensional movement patterns are healthiest relative to musculoskeletal health. Now, what are three dimensions? Dimension of moving straight ahead, up and down, moving vertically. And another dimension is moving side to side, and what I call a lateral movement. Another dimension is rotational movement. Now, Now, I know a lot of you out there have used the maces that I invented. We also use a sledgehammer where we swing them in a circle. We do figure eights. We do all kinds of little interesting movements with them. Those are very three-dimensional, more so in a rotational plane. It's also called the transverse plane. When you move straight ahead, up and down vertically, that's called the sagittal plane. When you move side to side laterally, that's called the frontal plane. Now, I'll say this. You should train all three directions. Most injuries in sports, most injuries in activity occur when you're moving side to side and when you're moving rotationally. Why is that? Because that's when the body has to compensate, relax, and contract at a faster pace. Most injuries in football or basketball or hockey or whatever sport occur when the athlete is changing directions. He stops and he plants, he lands or she lands. You're changing directions. You're having to go from a really force production to force reduction type of state. Another myth, you might say, which we're going to clear up with a fact, women will not develop bulky muscles if they engage in weightlifting. Now, I think this has changed for the better over the years. You find more and more women working out opposed to probably back 20, 30, 40 years ago. But there are still some women who believe that if you lift heavy weights, you're going to get bulky. That is not true. I can show you several pictures of women that are competitive weightlifters. I'm not talking bodybuilders, but a competitive weightlifter who are developed, but yet they've maintained a lot of their female features, and they're very attractive women. Now, the types of movements, I'll give you some specifics here. Squats, overhead press, weighted swings, jumps, crawls, strikes. Now, strikes are things like punching, kicking the bag, sprint training, pull-ups, lunges, good morning, deadlifts, rope climb. Pretty much the type of stuff we're doing at my gym. Now, at the bottom there, and by the way, guys, you can go to my YouTube page and you can check out all this information later on if you want to go back and take more specific notes. At the bottom there is a link, and that is the link to the Primal 10. Now, that is a YouTube video, or I should say a video podcast that I did about, probably 6-7 weeks ago. And it goes into real specifics of different types of exercises that meet the three-dimensional movement patterns, and also what I call the primal movements. I believe we are meant to train like our primal ancestors lived. Okay, let's get into eating now, which is probably one of the biggest concerned areas that I work with as a trainer and a coach, and probably the most asked about area of anything that I work with is food. Now, there are a lot of different philosophies about food, and 20 years ago when I first started doing this business, and I was a strength coach for different college teams and NFL teams, I was pretty much a calorie in, a calorie out type of guy. I believe that at that time, I just believed don't really worry about so much what you're eating, just work your ass off and burn off the calories. Well, I have completely moved away from that philosophy. The more I learn, the more I've experimented, the more I read articles, I read books about what many practitioners say, and many of those practitioners are a lot smarter than I am regarding nutrition and how the body works biochemically. That's not the way. And in fact, I'll even say this. Don't be overly concerned about how many calories you're burning. The standard American diet, SAD, SAD, which typically matches the food pyramid, if you've probably seen those before, which is roughly about 50 to 60% carbohydrates, 20 to 25% fat, and 15 to 20% protein. Going down the chart, a moderate low-carb eating plan is about 30 to 40% carbohydrates, fats about 40 to 50%, proteins about 10 to 20%. A high protein, which is more like a paleo type of plan, is about 50% protein, about 30 to 40% fat, and low carb at about 10 to 20%. Now, a high fat diet, 70 to 90%. I know some of you are probably saying, wow, that's a lot. I'll explain that in a minute. Low carb, 5 to 10%. Low protein, 5 to 10%. Now, my vote is high fat, low carb, and that it promotes a fat burning environment that is significantly more efficient than burning carbs for energy. I recommend a minimum of at least 60% of healthy saturated fat intake. The remaining 40% is dependent on your activity level, body type, and lifestyle management.
I don't know about that, buddy.
Okay, I want to go back to that slide there just and explain a couple of things here, guys. The remaining 40%. Now, let's say you're eating at least 60% fat in your diet. So if you're a high-powered athlete burning a lot of calories and you're, let's say, a triathlete, I'd put that person on at least 60% plus a higher amount of carbs. So let's say I might 60% fat, 25% carbohydrate, and the rest protein. Now, on the other hand, if you're a heavy-duty weightlifter, I might swap it out. It's 60% fat, about 20 to 25% protein, and the rest fat. So once again, it all is relative to what you're wanting to accomplish. Someone who is grossly obese, really overweight, I'm going to bump them up to about 90% fat, good fat in their diet, and protein, carb, 5%. Okay, now, let's see here. I didn't want that one. There we go. Sugar burner versus a fat burner. The two main sources of energy for the body are glucose and fat. Now, the body will always burn glucose, carbohydrate first and foremost. That does not mean that's a good thing, by the way. If your diet consists of more than 40% starches, cereals, and grain products, that promotes a sugar burning environment. If your diet consists of more than 60% saturated organic fats, that promotes a fat burning environment. Sugar burning environment is associated with higher incidence of type 2 diabetes, obesity, food cravings, leaky gut, and Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, cancer, etc., etc., etc. A low carb eating pattern mimics a semi-fasting state which lowers blood sugar and elevates ketone bodies. Ketone bodies are what is developed once you get on a ketone type of eating plan, by the way. Fats turn into ketones for energy, which spills into the blood to fuel the body. And by the way, becoming a fat burner is much more efficient than being a sugar burner. A fat burning environment is associated with stable blood sugar levels, lean muscular body, neuroprotection of the brain, and healthier mitochondria of the cells. At the bottom there is a link. I believe that's the link in which Dr. Kayla Campbell did our show about 3 months ago, and she did an excellent job in getting in a lot of detail about ketogenic diets. Guys, while I'm doing this, if you want to ask a few questions, message them in, and I will address them in about 10 minutes here. Okay, here's another area that's kind of controversial. Cholesterol and heart disease. Cholesterol is found in every cell of our body. Every single cell in the body, cholesterol is found. It helps to promote cell membranes, vitamin D, steroidal hormones, bile acids that play a huge role in digesting fat. It's crucial in forming new cell membranes. It helps in fighting inflammation. Here's a statistic I want to throw out to you. 3/4 of first-time heart attack victims are individuals with normal cholesterol readings. I'll read that again. 3/4 of first-time heart attacks are individuals with normal cholesterol readings. 75% of cholesterol is made inside the body internally. The other 25% is made from what you eat. And that 25% is pretty darn important, by the way. HDL, high density lipoproteins, the good stuff that removes plaque from the arteries. Low density lipoproteins, the so-called bad stuff, which is not necessarily bad. I'll go over that in a second. So-called bad stuff that, according to conventional medicine, can build up plaque in the arteries. Triglycerides, excuse me, are, gotta drink some water here. Live radio, guys. Triglycerides are a source of energy for the body, but in excess are very problematic. I don't know why it keeps jumping backwards. Here we go. LDL misconceptions. Now, I'm going to take my time going over this, guys. I want you to listen very carefully. LDL is considered the bad cholesterol, right? Not necessarily. There is a test you can do. It's called the LDL particle test, the lipoprotein particle profile, the bottom of the slide there, by a lab called SpectraCell. They will measure the particle size of your LDL. The larger the particle size, the less problematic. Looking at that chart there with the people on it. Now look at the gentleman there to the far left. 125 milligrams per deciliter. 125. That's not out of range necessarily, but it's close to high. But he's at a very low risk. Why? Because the particle of LDL is larger. Now, as you go more to the right, notice the particle sizes decrease. Smaller LDL particle sizes are more problematic. What happens there, they get trapped in the blood vessels, they become oxidized, they become toxic, and they lead to atherosclerosis. So, having said this, and having now learned this, guys, let's say you have LDL of 150, and by most standards, most reference ranges, that is dangerous. But what if the particle sizes are very, very large versus very, very small? It's less problematic. Now, there is a lab, as I said, that you can take to find out exactly what your particle size is. And anybody out there who has, if you have a problem with cholesterol or a loved one with cholesterol, the LDL, they're all freaked out about it, I would definitely look into this. You can look this up on the internet. SpectraCell, LPP or LPP Plus. Those are the two labs that you can take. You can order the lab online, go to someone, get your blood drawn, send it back, and they'll tell you the results of it. If you need help with it, come talk to me about it, because I also interpret labs. Speaking of labs, are my lab reports helping me? Now, this is a program I just started up in the last few weeks, guys. This is a pretty good one. Conventional medical reference ranges are based on the health of the general population. Now, the only problem with that is that 2/3 of the population of this country are overweight. 1/3 are obese. Over 1/2 are insulin resistant and are afflicted with a host of metabolic disorders, many of whom are moderately to highly medicated. So in other words, they're basing reference range. When you go to the doctor and you look at your cholesterol, speaking of cholesterol, they're basing that range on the health of mainly sick people. Now, I don't know about you, I don't like that. I want to be compared to somebody who's healthy. Now, here's the thing, as long as you're on your Lipitor or your statin drugs and you're within range, okay, you're healthy. And that's how they make the comparison. Let's come up with a reference range in which we compare you to people that are not on drugs, that are vibrant and healthy, that are energetic. And that's what I've come up with in my program. Now, I'm associated with a company called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, and they've come up with a optimal range, as we call it. The range window is much tighter than what you would see from the doctor. In fact, looking at this slide right here, This is where you want to be most times. But if you go to the doctor, you could be abnormally low and still be within range. You could be abnormally high and still be within range, which is where you want to be pretty much is right there. You could be also functioning low or functionally high, but you're functioning. That's the key. And so here's another area associated with this. You go to the doctor and your cholesterol is 230. By most labs, that's 30 points over where you should be. So what's he going to do or she going to do? Take this Lipitor, take this statin drug. That's what they're going to do. You might be totally healthy. You might be totally healthy and be within range. In fact, I'll give you a little story here. I did my own. I didn't do my own. I went to a lab about 3 or 4 months ago, had my blood drawn, and my cholesterol was 190. According to the reference range, it's anywhere from 180 to 180 to 260 was within range. I just worked with a client recently who went to a different lab. His cholesterol was 230. According to the reference range of his lab, anything over 199 is considered high. And what did the doctor tell him to do? Get on this drug. And he's feeling just fine, by the way. And by the way, he didn't get on the drugs. So guys, there's a lot of variance to this, and I would recommend that you contact me and let's talk about this reference range as a program that I offer. Okay, at the bottom of the page there is a link. Check that out, and you can go back and, like I said, look at the podcast and take notes. knowyourfoodtypes.webs.com is the foundational website for that. The gut-brain connection, important one. Over 70% of neurotransmitters, okay, in other words, how your brain communicates with your body, dopamine, GABA, serotonin, acetylcholine, endorphins, glutamate, epinephrine, norepinephrine, which are your adrenaline, is produced within the gut. For every single message that the brain sends to the gut sends 9 messages back to the brain. I'm going to repeat that. For every single message that the brain sends to the gut sends 9 messages back to the brain. How important is the gut? How important is your gut health? Pretty darn important. Pretty important. Over 70% of your immune system is located within the gut. 80% of melatonin, the sleep hormone, is produced within the gut and plays a huge role in the health of the gut, by the way. So guys, that gut-brain connection is huge. You have to take care of your gut. If the gut is not clean, you could have neural problems, you could have joint problems, you could have skin problems. Going back to the second chart we had there, I should say the first chart that showed the all the peripheral areas going on with the body, neural health, skin health, bone health, muscle health, all important. How well do you detox? All related to the gut. Okay, now guys, we're getting towards the end of the my part. I'm going to have you guys start messaging in some questions here. These are a list of references. I want you to check those out. And everything that I do is not original thought, believe me. There's people out there smarter than me that I learn from, and that's where I get my information. So you can check out these references. Okay. Somebody asked me, so do you do a detox? The best kind of detox I recommend, guys, is fasting, which I'll talk about here in a second. But let me go over this real quick here. Innovative sports training. Okay, you guys all know what I offer here pretty much. Hormonal biomechanical evaluation, gut healthy consulting, get healthy consulting, diet, rest, stress management, exercise, and supplementation, medical training classes, sports classes, private training consultation. All these websites down here. Guys, I have tons of blogs on here that you can read and in your spare time that talk about health of the gut, talks about training, talks about nutrition, talks about ketogenic diet, talks about when's the best time to eat, day or night? It's just a plethora of topics to go check out on these blogs. knowyourfoodtype.webs.com, metabolicprimal.webs.com, istworkshops.webs.com. So please check those out. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the stage is yours. Uh, Anything you want to ask me, don't be afraid. We're all at home here together. We're all friends. We're all family. Just message in a few questions, and I believe Neil asked me what type of detox. The only type of detox that I really do is I believe in fasting. I believe we're meant to fast. At least I do my fasting once a week. But as human beings, we all came from living in the wild. And living in the wild, people people ate and people fasted. You know, they were hunters and they were gatherers. And guess what? When you hunted and when you didn't have a great day of hunting, guess what? You didn't eat. And so we are, as human beings, we are meant to go through a certain phase of fasting. Fasting helps to cleanse the body. Fasting gives the digestive system a break and a rest because digestion takes up a bunch of energy in the body. When you're always trying to digest food, that takes up a lot of energy and it can be stressful to the body. Sometimes people tend to overeat. Thanksgiving right around the corner, Christmas right around the corner. People tend to overeat and you start to wear out the gut. And guess what? When the gut wears out, things start breaking down. That's how you start getting leaky gut. So in terms of a detox, I recommend fasting. Now there are certain other types of detoxes out there. You can do liver detoxes. You can do kidney detoxes. You can do just drink water, bone broth. In my opinion, if you want to do like a bone broth type of fast, which I've done before, which is good for the gut, just do bone broth. You can do that. So there's all different types of fasts, or excuse me, uh, cleanses out there. Okay, creatine supplements from Keith. Um, Creatine is good. It will help you with your strength and putting on bulk, definitely. But just be a little bit careful of it because what creatine does really, it's kind of like a diuretic internally. It'll draw water from the organs of the body to the muscles of the body, which helps your muscles hypertrophy. So if you're going to take creatine, drink lots of water with it. Don't overdo it. Now, when creatine first came on the market, I was a strength coach at Fresno State and Oklahoma State, and guys were always talking about creatine. And when it first came out, they recommended doing a loading phase, which I do not agree with because I believe that I, I think that dehydrates you. So just be very careful because creatine can dehydrate you. But I'm not opposed to creatine, um, but I'm a bigger believer in just eating good, wholesome foods. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but anyway, um, there's another question I believe here about water. So let's talk about that. Now, Neil asked, so just drink water. I suppose you're asking about fasting there. You can do it that way. You can do just a water fast and send me another message, Neil, if that's specifically what you wanted to hear. But you can drink water only, yes. You can do tea, like green tea. You can do bone broth, clear broth. You can also do that during the fast. And the way that I recommend fasting, I'll talk about that a little bit. Um, I just heard somebody sneeze there. Somebody needs to mute their phone there, guys. I don't know who that is, but um, when you do a fast, okay, I'm going to mute you guys here. Maybe I can. Let's say you do a bone broth type of fast. Just drink bone broth or put it in a bowl and drink it like soup if you want to do it that way, and you just don't eat anything else. Now, here's the thing about fasting. The more of a sugar burner you are, the harder it is to fast. Because when you're a sugar burner, that's the analogy, that's the equivalent of putting figs and leaves on the fire to get it going. And what happens to that fire? It burns out quickly. When you become a fat burner, you put on nice, big, fat, thick logs to keep the fire going in a consistent basis, a consistent level. Now you don't have to keep going back every 30 minutes and starting up a new fire because you're using just small kindling wood. So using nice, big, fat logs is the equivalent of becoming a fat burner. So when you become more fat adaptive in your body, in your life, in your lifestyle, you will be able to fast more efficiently. If you're more of a sugar burner, you're going to find fasting kind of tough because you're going to get hungry. You're going to have cravings. And by the way, when you become more of a fat burner, you will have less cravings for stuff typically that you'd have cravings for in the past, like sugar, or maybe like something that's real salty. You will have less cravings. Typically people that are sugar burners, they have more cravings. And here's another thing. Just because you're full does not mean that you cannot have cravings, because we have two types of hormones that deal with our appetite. We have ghrelin. You guys may have never heard of that. It's called ghrelin. That is a hunger hormone. When you're more of a sugar burner, your body makes more ghrelin, which tells you need to eat more. When you become more of a fat burner, you become more of leptin, using hormone leptin. Leptin is a satiety hormone. Satiety hormones tells you that you're full. You're full, you don't need to eat anymore. So that's another reason why I'm really big on good fatty diets. Now let me clarify something here. Good fats does not mean going out to McDonald's or Taco Bell or something, or eating hot dogs. Good fats are things like avocados. Good fats are things like olive oil, but don't cook with high heat with olive oil. Coconut oil, grass-fed butter, uh, wild game, wild fish, or wild caught fish, I should say. Those are good fatty items to choose from. Olives are good fats. Okay? You guys have any other questions out there? Just fire away. Now's your time. Just act like I'm sitting in the living room and you're talking to me, guys. Don't be bashful.
Roberto, this is
Hello? Yep.
Hey, so what about ratio? So say I've got a protein shake that I drink that's like 400 calories. How many grams of fat should be in that shake?
Uh, well, you're not going to get it by putting protein powder in. I can tell you that. The way you can increase the grams of fat, I can tell you that, is by putting things like coconut oil in it. You could put almond butter in it. And here's something that I've been doing with my shakes. I know this might sound kind of gross to some of you. I'll put butter in my shakes. Okay, I'll use almond butter. I'll I'll use almond milk. I'll put a banana in there, and I'll put about maybe almost a tablespoon of butter in there. And I really don't measure it out percentage-wise necessarily, but like I said, that about 2/3, 3/4 of that shake. This is Joel, right?
Yes.
Okay, should be fat. Now, what's butter? Fat. Okay, almond butter, fat. Banana, not so much. You might get maybe half a gram of fat out of that. You can even throw an egg in there. What's an egg? A lot of fat, cholesterol. So you're looking at probably 2/3 of that shake being fat right there. Now, on the other hand, let's say you make another type of smoothie that you just use apple juice and maybe some blueberries. Well, there's not a lot of fat in that, is there? Right?
Right.
Okay. So, if you just make, let's say, apple juice and blueberries, and maybe put a little protein powder in there. That's not a lot of fat. Now, I personally wouldn't drink that type of a shake because, like I said, I'm more into, I want something that's going to stick to my ribs a bit better, honestly speaking. Now, that's why I recommend you put in things like almond butter, coconut oil. You can put that in there. You could use butter. You could use, you can even put raw nuts in there if you want to, because basically nuts are fat. I mean, almond butter is just extracted almonds is what it is. Cashew butter is just extracted oil from cashews. Okay,
Okay.
did that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay, but I would just do that. I would just use almond milk. Now, people ask me all the time about milk versus almond milk, and I'll talk about that just a little bit here. I know you don't have a question regarding it, but I'll talk about it anyway. I am not a big believer in drinking cow's milk, guys, and the reason is this. We as human beings have one stomach. A cow has four stomachs. We are not meant to digest the molecules of cow's milk like the cow's calf does. That is why when so many people, as they become older, typically cannot tolerate milk. They cannot handle the lactose. They become bloated, they get gaseous, they become sick, and some people become violently ill from drinking milk. I mean, they vomit and everything else, get diarrhea. I mean, we are just not meant to drink milk, in my opinion. Now, cow's milk is worse than goat's milk. And I've been doing a lot of reading on goat's milk lately. There's even some practitioners, experts who don't like even goat's milk. Goat's milk is easier to digest than cow's milk. Okay. Um, Now let's talk about almond milk, coconut milk. Just be very careful when you buy that stuff. Look at the label, because what they do in these stores, when they make it at the factory, they put a bunch of fillers in it, like carrageenan and Gower gum and that kind of stuff. They put fillers in it, I think really because they want to sell you less product and make money on you. That's probably why they do it. But they put fillers in it. You can buy, I don't know the name of the product exactly, but if you go to Hy-Vee or you go to these really high-end health food stores, you can buy almond milk and coconut milk that without all the fillers in it. So just be on the lookout for that. You guys have any other questions out there? Fire away, man. Ask the trainer night. Um, One thing I'll talk about here also, I'll go back and talk a little bit more about inflammation. Okay, I'm scrolling down to see if there's any more questions. Let's see here. Okay, Neil asked a question about, I'll address this real quick here. Is the fast 24 hours or longer or shorter? It depends. Once again, it depends on your tolerance level too, because I've done up to about a 46-hour fast. I don't recommend starting out doing that, guys, but it's possible. And trust me, you will survive. You will be surprised. And once again, if you're more of a sugar burner, it's going to be harder for you. I recommend this. Slowly transition into fasting. The first time you do it, maybe do it and count the time you're in bed too. So let's say you go to bed at 10 o'clock tonight and you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, there's an 8-hour fast. But now you don't eat until 6 o'clock that evening. So that's another 12 hours. Okay, so that's about what? About a 24-hour, or excuse me, 22-hour fast. That's not bad. But let's say you can't make it to 6 o'clock. Let's say you want to eat something at 3 o'clock. The next time you do it, you go to an hour later. Next time you do it, go 2 hours later. Next time you do it, do 3 hours later. So you can always add on to it as you're slowly transitioning from becoming more of a sugar burner to a fat burner. Less carbs, more fats, quality proteins. And I'm going to tell you, it's not easy making that transition always for some people, because as you transition from becoming more of a sugar burner to a fat burner, you might go through a little bit of withdrawal symptoms there. You might feel a little bit woozy, a little bit nauseous at times, but trust me, it'll work. And that's probably where a lot of people give up on it because, hey, look, you've been eating like crap for so long and all of a sudden you change it. It's just not going to happen overnight, guys. I know that I try to stick to mainly a ketogenic / Paleolithic type of eating plan for myself. And when I first started doing it, you know, fasting, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was getting pretty hungry. But as I slowly transitioned changing my eating patterns and habits, it got easier and easier and easier. And I've gone to bed on an empty stomach, and I didn't think I could ever do that. And you know what? It didn't bother me. Now, sometimes what I do during my fast, I'll have a bowl of broth, and that seems to kind of knock off the edge. And broth is good because it doesn't have a lot of substance to it. It'll fill you up, but it's really like drinking vitamin water. Really, there's a lot of good probiotics and good minerals in it. So I recommend doing that. Now I want to talk about this inflammation factor a little bit. Um, Inflammation is the mother of all diseases. Inflammation is the mother of all diseases. Every disease and illness of the body, inflammation typically, 99.99% of the time, is the foundation of what's causing the disease. People that are obese have more inflammation. People with cancer have more inflammation. People with Alzheimer's, excuse me, have more inflammation. Excuse me, I had to drink some water there. People with Parkinson's have more inflammation. Um, Anytime you hear the word itis, like meningitis, tendonitis, arthritis, um, thyroiditis, that's inflammation. What causes inflammation? Stress. It could be physical stress. It could be nutritional stress. And a lot of people don't understand that foods that you eat can be stressful, big time stressful. As a matter of fact, if you're sensitive to a food, not allergic, but sensitive, there's a difference. If you are sensitive to a food, it can have minute stresses on you, like causing sinus issues, um, causing headaches, and you don't really think that much about it. But over a period of time, that stress keeps mounting and mounting and mounting. And here's an example that I use. If I was standing next to you right now, and I was poking my finger in your arm just for a few seconds, no big deal, right? What if I put my finger in your arm for the next 20 hours? What would happen? Inflammation, swelling, tissue breakdown, disease would set in. That's the same thing that happens when you're eating crappy, shitty foods, excuse my expression, when you're staying up too late at night, when you're stressing, when you're not exercising enough, when you're exercising too much, you're putting stress on the body. And everybody's different from person to person. We all are different on how we respond. And that's the beauty of functional training. And that's why I've gone this direction with my training philosophy in the last 10 years or so. I used to be the type of a guy, like I said, it was calorie in and calorie out. Just get in the weight room, work your ass off, lift, go out and run, and you'll be all right. Well, guys, that's not enough. It takes more than that because everybody doesn't respond to that. And I'll say this, the older you get, the less responsive you are to that type of training modality of just working, busting your butt, lifting weights or running miles or getting on the treadmill and then not really worrying about what you eat as long as you keep your calorie levels low. It's not about calories. It's about nutritional density. I mean, I'm more concerned about that. I don't counsel people to count calories, to be honest with you. I counsel people to eat whole foods, and when you're full, don't eat anymore. That's it. Unfortunately, food in our society has become a thing where, okay, it's a social thing. It's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, which is right around the corner. I'm not opposed to that. Anniversaries, birthdays, baptisms, reunions, I mean, you name it. Food has become such a social thing in our society, wrapped around so many different events, and we use food as a reward and sometimes also as a punishment, unfortunately. And the bottom line is you have to reevaluate the way you look at food. I mean, look at food as being nutrition for the body, not just the emotional uplifting for the body. So, but that's what I want to talk about on that. Any other questions out there, guys? You can message them in if you don't want to talk online here. Um, there's one more thing I wanted to go over. If there's no other question, I'm gonna end it for the evening, guys. But don't hang up yet. Hang on just 1 minute. Okay, the next Your Life, Your Health webinar. We're gonna go over. This is right after Thanksgiving, by the way, November 30th. Perfect timing before Christmas too. Menus and recipes that promotes vibrant health. I've got a lot of questions regarding do a show about recipes, about cooking. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of cooking specifics here, guys. I'm not doing that. I'll come up with some menus and some recipes that I can share with you guys, things that I've done in my kitchen. And I'm not saying I'm the world's greatest cook necessarily. Um, my leanings obviously is more towards paleo and in ketosis. So having said that, I'm more of a high fat, low carb type of person. So tune in, and that's going to be November 30th. That's on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, and I hope you all attend that. One last call, guys. You have any other questions out there about anything? Okay. Kind of a short one tonight. Like I said, I wanted to make this more about question and answer. I hope I answered your questions. Tune in on November the 30th. We're going to do this again, guys. Tell a lot of people about this. Guys, this is free. It doesn't cost you a dime. The information is invaluable. Next time we're going to talk about menus and recipes, and a lot of people don't know the right type of food to make for their family, for themselves. Things that maybe you can cut some corners, won't take you as long to make, because people today are busy. I understand that. I mean, most people don't want to spend 5 hours a day in the kitchen cooking stuff. So in eating healthy, it's not the cheapest thing to do in the world, but there's ways you can get around it. And the ways of getting around it, you may have to spend a little bit more time preparing things, but you have to just be organized about it. For example, what I do, I made some bone broth just last week, and once it cooled off, I put it in different baggies and I put it in the freezer. And maybe the night before, I'll take it out, stick it in the fridge, and I'll eat that for the next week or so. So that's the way I do it. I mean, just basic common sense stuff, guys. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out how to eat right. I mean, there's a wealth of information out there. Um, Hopefully, take advantage of the programs that I offer with my evaluations, with my lab interpretations. And then that's another thing. You guys out there, if you've been to the doctor in the last year or so, you want me to take a look at your lab. Maybe you're having some things here and there that creep up on you. Don't know exactly, but your labs say that you're within range, you're normal. The doctor says it's in your head. I can take a look at it and come up with a solution. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose, but I can look at it and determine what areas, what organs, what glands are functioning and what's not functioning. Are there some supplements out there? Or is it a way of attacking it from a dietary perspective, maybe from an exercise perspective? So I can help you with some of those issues, even with your kids if they're having some issues there. Okay, guys, that is going to be it for tonight, and I will see y'all during the week. Have a blessed week, and God bless you.